I have a PhD in uncertainty. I tweeted when I left my corporate job that the uncertainty in life is the greatest source of opportunity. For those of you who don't know me, I dropped out of high school. There was a period of time when I lived in my car. I've reinvented my career a couple of times. I go into situations and opportunities not necessarily knowing the outcome, but being very open to pivoting. I am over the letting the wind take me where it may, and I want to see what happens when I am more deliberate. It's now time to tighten up and lock in. If it's a 1% off, it's 100% out.
Welcome to the Eat, Play, Crush podcast. I am your host, Mary Shenouda.
Welcome to the Eat, Play, Crush podcast and Happy New Year. At least I'm hoping it's going to be a Happy New Year. I want to start off this particular episode with some reflections. If 2023 was good to you, I'm super pumped for you. I hope those blessings continue, and I hope you pay some of those blessings forward. If 2023 sucked for you, you are not alone, and I hope that we can find some meaning out of our challenges. With that said, every year, I always go through a 3-question prompt with myself, with relationships in my life, and I'm going to share what those questions are and then go through my own answers, which I actually haven't done before. But the 3-question prompt is, what do you want to start doing? What do you want to stop doing? And what do you want to continue to do? And if you're doing this for yourself, you can do it on a macro level, like what do I want to do for the year? You can do it on a micro level with projects. And if you're doing it with someone like your significant other or a family member, it's how do you want to show up in the relationship in those ways? So what is something you want me to stop doing, start doing, and continue to do? Something I want to personally stop doing is I want to stop delaying joy, which I think is something a lot of people relate to. I also want to stop delaying grief and all the emotions in between. Something that I really pride myself in is my ability to look at things through a stoic lens and using my logic, which has its tremendous advantages when you're in critical situations or you're in the profession that I'm in. However, for me this year has proven to provide way too much for me to logic through, to the point that it has done me more harm than good. And so I definitely want to stop shelving how I feel about things or scheduling when I'm going to feel things and allowing myself to feel them in the moment, which we'll touch upon that in greater detail when it comes to how that can impact your health. For context of how delaying joy and delaying grief has impacted me this year, I lost a friend, I had a scare with a parent, and way more things that if I even go down the list, it almost sounds unreal. And it was jut up against a lot of really impactful positive things, like receiving my championship ring or having a mention in Arnold Schwarzenegger's book. Actually, not a mention, like a whole section about me. Neither of those things hit me in the way they should have hit me, because I was also in the middle of taking care of business or taking care of family or taking care of clients, and I could just feel my health suffering. I would be in the moment with a client or at the stadium or in the airport, and I can feel it all in my chest. My eye would be twitching, and it sucked in both instances to carry around massive grief and not know where to place it, or to know that I very logically and objectively should feel proud or happy for those accomplishments, because they're no small feats. But I also know that if I allowed myself to feel the good, I was going to have to leave room to feel the bad. And the bad was just so insurmountable that I was afraid that I wouldn't come back from that. And I think when you shelve all of that to happen at once, that's where it can be unbearable. And my body was giving me signals throughout the year of like, we need you to feel this. And it comes up in ways that I think most people would disregard, even though I was very aware of it. It's headaches, it's back pain, like intense back pain. It is hormone imbalances. It's lack of my period. I called it disassociation. My therapist said it was I was just emotionally flat. I think we're both saying the same thing, semantics. But there's better ways for me to cope with it and not to shame myself, essentially. But there's better ways for me to have coped with it. And to be fair, it was a lot. And I know I'm not the only one that had a lot happen this year. As far as what I want to start doing, is I want to start to get really specific. There is this whole thing about being really comfortable with uncertainty. You hear a lot of people talk about that. Rick Rubin has a piece that's going viral around that. I have a PhD in uncertainty. I tweeted when I left my corporate job that the uncertainty in life is the greatest source of opportunity. It has given me a richness of experience. I have created an incredible body of work. For those of you who don't know me, I dropped out of high school. There was a period of time when I lived in my car. I've reinvented my career a couple of times. I go into situations and opportunities, not necessarily knowing the outcome, but being very open to pivoting. That has served me well. I'm over the uncertainty now. I am over the letting the wind take me where it may. And I want to see what happens when I am more deliberate, when I get really specific and sorting out what absolute certainty can get for me. So I'm not saying that's what you should do. I really think a lot of people need to learn and be comfortable with uncertainty. I'm just saying for me, I'm on the track where it's now time to tighten up and lock in. And to tie that into something that I mentioned around what I want to stop doing, I do want to be more deliberate in the moments of joy and celebration. I want to be more deliberate in the moments of grief. It doesn't mean I want to have a breakdown in the middle of an inopportune moment. I want to get really specific about the people I want to work with, the projects I want to absolutely crush. And if something does not fit it completely, I'm out. Similar to if it's on a whole body, yes, it's a no. If it's a 1% off, it's 100% out. I can think about the times in which I felt that 1% this year and I let things go on a little too long. This podcast, for example, being one of them. I started with a network. Things were just not going the way that I wanted them to go. And it was in really unnecessary ways. And I felt it in my stomach. I called it out early saying, I don't think this is right. I even remember saying to my agent, go ahead and earmark this. We're going to come back to this feeling and I'm going to be right. And had I just listened to that feeling, that 1% off, I would not have wasted almost a year. And so I decided to go independent with this podcast, and it has proven so far to be the right choice. Same thing when it comes to relationships. I think you kids call it the ick. I felt the ick in a moment. Again, trying to play devil's advocate with myself, ignored the ick, wasted time, wasted energy for both parties. So just essentially business, personal. I just need to trust my gut, be specific, and if it doesn't fit that, I'm out. That's what I'm going to practice. And that's what I want to start doing is I'm over the uncertainty. Thank you for what you have done for me. I want to get specific. I reserve the right to change my mind on this, by the way. Change my mind on the specifics, rather. And when it comes to what do I want to continue doing for 2024 is a couple of months ago, I started simplifying everything in my life. That meant simplifying the objects in my apartment, simplifying the relationships that I am surrounded by, simplifying the projects I'm working on. And I just want to continue that trend. I essentially want to say if it doesn't fit into a bucket where it's essential, meaning something to do with my work, or if it doesn't bring me joy, it's no longer going to remain in my life. And that element of joy is really important to me because it goes back to the first thing, which is what do I want to stop doing? I want to stop delaying joy. And when there is so much clutter around you, it makes it very difficult to simplify and see how it is you really feel. I kept for the last few months thinking about a story that a gentleman once told me. I was in the middle of nowhere at a farm, and there was a guy who was super jacked, look intimidating, absolute sweetheart. He's a father, and he was telling me a story about his son being bullied in school and how the way he tackled his son being bullied was he went to the kid's house, knocked on the door, and the boy who was bullying his son came to the door. And he asked him for his father, and the father came to the door. And I can only imagine how intimidating that might feel, having this like woo guy at the door being like, I need to have a chat with you outside. And he had him shut the door so that gentleman's son wouldn't hear the conversation. He got really close to him. And he said that he told the man that his son was having his joy taken away from him by this man's son. And he says, like, I don't really like that. And, that has to probably go back to leadership and what kind of father you are. And so I just want you to have a chat with your boy, because if I find out that your boy is taking any more of my son's joy, I'm going to come back here. And it's not going to be a good conversation. And his son stopped getting bullied. Don't know what happened. But that element, that idea of him advocating for his son's joy is something I've been playing back in my mind repeatedly over the last few months, and essentially have decided to advocate for myself in that way. I don't want anything around me that is taking away from my joy. And it's not reckless optimism, if you will. It's not me only leading into things that make me feel good, because you need negative things to allow you to grow, and you need negative things and even to understand what joy is. But I am doing an audit and a simplifying and making sure that I have the best scenario, best partnerships, best clients and projects to work in to facilitate that joy, because then I can show up and create better and show up for myself and my health even better. Simplifying, even tactically, objects in your life has more power than you can realize. I read some headline, just the first paragraph of the article. I do generally read full articles, but this one I got the gist of it, that for women particularly, clutter impacts our health and our well-being even more so than men. Not sure why that is. If I read the rest of the article, probably would figure that out. But I was like, checks out. So simplifying for me in my apartment for a very long time has also doubled as my office, but also my warehouse. I moved a lot of the things for Fat Fudge into my apartment. So you've got imagine this beautiful view of Southern California, and then you've got a piano, a guitar, cool plants, and then just racks of Fat Fudge and shipping boxes and 300 pounds of ashwagandha over here and 60 pounds of beets over here and wires that go to co-packing machinery. And it just takes up every extra bit of space in my apartment, from the moment you walk in, out to the balcony, wrapping around to the hallway into my bedroom. That's a lot. On many levels, I got too used to it and didn't even realize the impact it was having on my health. And I just hit a point a couple months ago where I'm like, okay, and I'll get into more on Fat Fudge at some point in this particular episode, but I decided just to start simplifying everything, going through my closet, removing anything that I didn't wear in the last 6 months. So this year, think about what you want to stop doing, what you want to start doing, and what you want to continue to do. And spend some time really reflecting on the previous year to give yourself a meaty response. Don't shortchange yourself and say things like, I want to start working out. I want to stop being negative. Really, really reflect. Give yourself a meaty and thoughtful response, much like I did. Write them down. Put them up somewhere where you'll see them so you can hold yourself accountable to that. Don't get upset if you fall off that. Just get back on, and we'll revisit this at the end of this year, and hopefully we all have some wins for that. But I definitely want to hear what your responses are, so come back and tell me. Being a performance chef, I figure I should share some of my top tips for you for 2024, my recommendations for you. Number one, I need you guys to eat more protein and eat more in general. The most common thing I have to do with clients is actually get them to eat more, not less. You might think you're having an energy dip in the afternoon. You might reach for that cup of coffee. Maybe you just need to hydrate and eat some more food. I definitely think you should prioritize your protein and then get a good mix of your carbohydrates and fats. I know people subscribe to keto and carnivore and all these different deities. My answer to that is it depends. Paleo, what works for me may not work for you, and what works today may not work in 6 months. And something that's a superfood for one person can be kryptonite for someone else. So barring all of those variables, in general, make sure that you're eating enough and prioritizing your protein, and you will most assuredly see a difference in your overall health, your focus, especially in the morning, especially in the early afternoon. And on the tip of eating more protein and eating more nutritionally good for you foods, I want to talk about the difference between being malnourished and being undernourished. So undernourished, I'm telling you to eat more. You're not eating enough. This is the year I want you to focus on micronutrients, so you're not malnourished. When you eat processed foods, I'm so glad that we're finally talking about processed foods. When you're eating junk food, essentially, which, look, you can enjoy your double fried, stuffed, whatever every once in a while. I'm not trying to take that away from anyone. I mean, I ate a whole bag of marshmallows the other day. I enjoyed it. I didn't feel good because that is not a nutritionally dense food. But this is the year I want you to focus on the power of micronutrients. And this is the difference between reaching for an apple, reaching for an avocado, blueberries. I love liver, leafy greens versus going for the processed food. When you are malnourished and you're eating foods that are nutritionally shallow, like processed foods, you might think you're eating enough, but you're going to feel like shit, essentially. And your body's going to keep seeking out the nutrients it needs to perform optimally. And I think this is where you can start to get to the place where you are overeating in a negative way. And if you want to know more about the power of food and micronutrients, I know a girl you can follow on social media that posts spotlights on all foods and shows you how to use them from a culinary perspective, how to use them from a performance perspective, and gets into what those micronutrients are. You will make a world of a difference in your well-being when you identify these two buckets, eating enough and eating enough of the right foods, and understanding that it's a learning process and it's going to depend. And there's a place that you can start with a baseline. And I talk about that on my social media, but just consider those as two buckets I want you to start with. My go-tos when I am in a bind and I can tell that I haven't eaten enough or I've gotten that awareness that I haven't eaten enough is I'll grab an avocado. Super easy, super quick. I'll throw some salt on there, and it usually is an easy and quick pick-me-up. And if I have jerky in my bag, I'll reach for that. And then if I am somewhere where I can actually have a real meal, I'll grab a quick piece of cooked salmon or some cold cuts, and again, go to the produce section and grab an avocado. But I tend to always try to make sure I have a snack in my bag. And the times that I don't, I also will hide snacks from myself. So there's zippers in my bag. There are packets of fat fudge in my center console. There's some thrown in my trunk. Like I sort of Mary-proof the fact that I know that there are times in my life where I will be on the go and won't have something to eat. And so I will do that for myself by throwing little snacks in random places. Do that with my migraine medication too, just in case. And I only started to do that with myself in the last few years because I noticed that I was doing that for my clients. My clients obviously are high achievers, they're on the go. And in order to take care of them in that way, I tell them, let's hide snacks throughout the car, the house, every single go bag you have, sort of prepare yourself and stay ready for those times in which you might need to reach for something. And then make sure that the something you're reaching for is nutrient dense and serving you in that way. My next tip is a group of ingredients and supplements I want you guys to consider if you haven't already. You've heard me talk about black cumin seed oil. I know there's a product coming eventually, but until then, you can get it at Whole Foods. Incorporating black cumin seed oil, very powerful anti-inflammatory, really great for your gut health, antibacterial, antifungal. Incorporate that, please. I also want you guys, if you're not already, pay attention to your vitamin D intake, pay attention to your magnesium intake. These are crucial. Enough of us have talked about it that you're not paying attention to that. What are you doing? And one that I don't really talk about as much, but I do incorporate in my diet almost every day. It's incorporated in my clients' foods and their performance drinks, is saffron. Pay attention to this little guy. I think it's going to have a moment. I know it's the world's most expensive spice, but a little goes a long way. I want you to pay attention to saffron for these reasons. I incorporate it for athletes to help increase their endurance capacity. It helps increase oxygen into your body. We use this with athletes when we're going to train for altitude. So think about us training for altitude, what that is doing for your lung capacity. Now think about incorporating that every single day. There's another little tidbit about saffron is that it is a natural mood booster. A fun little story around that is that there were some nuns who were taking saffron and they were so happy. They were put in such a good mood that the church actually banned them from taking saffron, which probably tells you a lot around religion. But if it was that powerful that the church banned it, why are we not incorporating saffron as a line of first defense before antidepressants? Not that there's anything wrong with antidepressants. I always think that you just really should start with nutrition and see what impact you can make there from the gut out. So those are the foods and supplements that I would say that you need to incorporate this year if you haven't already, with the caveat, do your due diligence, check contraindications. Again, one person's superfood can be another person's kryptonite. If you haven't done blood work, go see your doctor, get some baseline blood work done, and see what it is that your body may need. The next tip I want to bring up has to do with your activity level. So I know I mentioned that it can be really hard when you have a crazy schedule to carve out an hour. That can feel really daunting to some people. Like, how do I get an hour? I get up, I've got so much to do. I've got the kids, I've got work. I don't get home till late. And look, there's a lot of influencers and fitness people out there who are like, oh, it's 2 a.m. and I'm still getting it in. Good for you. Good for you not being relatable to most people. I like to hat tip Joe Holder on exercise snacks. You may not be able to get an hour in, but you can probably get 15 minutes in 4 times a day. You can go for a walk. You can do air squats. 2006, I had a stand-up desk. I was that annoying guy that HR did not like. Stand-up desk, kettlebell in my cubicle, and I would find ways to incorporate a little bit of movement throughout the day. That is something you can feel good about. So if you can't get in a full gym session, the power of incorporating small bites of movement in any way will prove to be very beneficial for your well-being and your mental well-being. And my final tip for 2024 is minding your emotional well-being. It does not matter what you eat. It doesn't matter what supplement you take. It almost doesn't really matter what exercise you're doing. You're not going to perform optimally, and the food's not going to perform optimally, and you're not going to move optimally if you're not minding how you feel in your mind and how you feel in your heart and how you feel in your gut. I'm talking about gut when it has to do with like how you feel, gut feelings. You cannot silo performance in the tactical way from your performance and how you feel as a human. The number one deficiency I see among almost everyone in my life is compassion, physical touch, and connection. So let this be the year that you prioritize that. If you can afford to get a therapist, completely support that. If you can't afford to get a therapist, there are different tools you can find online to help you connect better with yourself. There are things you can do like taking walks, meditation, finding any activity that brings you joy or brings you peace. Something for me that's super simple and resetting me is laying on the floor and just listening to music. Putting on a good playlist is something that brings my nervous system down and allows my body to feel like we're good. And when your body can feel safe and relaxed, when its cells can go ahead and focus on, okay, well, now I can go work on digestion. Now I can go work on repairing this injury. Now I can be present for what activity the body is asking for. That's when you're going to feel your best. But if you're not taking care of what's in your mind and your heart, the rest of it, I don't want to say it's all for naught. It just won't be at its best. And I'm not saying don't do the things like eat well or exercise until you take care of your emotional well-being. Just don't leave the emotional well-being way back over here in tow. Definitely keep that in the forefront. It's something that is just crucial, just truly crucial. Now, I know a lot of you are probably doing the whole new year, new you thing, which I'm not taking away from that. People were like, oh, screw resolutions. those are people that like to yuck on people's yum. I am pumped if you decide to make your resolution for January 1st. I'm pumped if you want to make that resolution in the middle of the summer. When somebody wants to make a change, that is amazing. A lot of people do feel lost on where to start. Or you might be a pro, but you want to take it a step further. This is the time that I get the most requests for gut resets, and it's the time that most of my sales for the gut reset goes up. So if you want to take a look at the Eat, Play, Crush Gut Reset, go to eatplaycrush.com. It is not a cleanse. It is not a detox. It is 1 week of a combination of fasting mimicking, food elimination, and nutrient-dense food inclusion. It includes a journal prompt for you to track how you feel physically, emotionally, your sleep quality, how you're responding to these foods. And it is a great jumping off point before you enter into a new lifestyle. For example, people will replace something called Prolon with this. A lot of doctors' offices are replacing Prolon with My Gut Reset because it incorporates whole foods. But if you're going to start into a journey of investigating your health with a doctor, for example, functional medicine doctor, and you come in having completed this gut reset and taking those notes, you've saved yourself a ton of money and you have given yourself a very clear view into the testing that they're going to do. So for example, if you went bananas over the holidays, like a lot of people have, and you go to get this testing done at the beginning of the year, you're going to show inflammatory markers. No shit. We know that. But if you do this gut reset, you've gotten your body down to a baseline. And when you run those labs, you're going to see where your body is minus all the circumstantial noise from the holidays. If you were like, I'm not going to go into testing, but I do want a reset before I jump into Whole30 or jump into experimenting with carnivore or just eating healthy in general, this week is a really good lead up to it. If you are someone who experiences headaches, stomach disruption, irregular bowel movement, skin conditions, and you haven't really been able to pinpoint what it is, the gut reset really helps uncover that and then helps you jump into wanting to maintain how you felt during the gut reset from that point on. On my Instagram, there's a little bubble called Gut Reset. You can read other people's experiences on it. You can see which dope athlete or actor who has also done the gut reset and shared their experience. And then if you have any questions for me, you can always send them my way. info@eatplaycrush.com. Depending on your starting baseline, you can experience a lot of different things during the gut reset. Again, if you go to that bubble, you'll be able to read these, but I'll share some of them with you. I had one client lose over 15 pounds in that 1 week. Now, they're not losing that weight. They're losing inflammation in their body, and they were able to see the impact of what they were eating prior to their body and make a shift from there. I have a few people who have Crohn's disease or have celiac disease like me, and they'll use the gut reset when they have a flare-up to bring everything back down to baseline. I had a client who was really struggling with sleep before they came to me. We did the gut reset, and the gut reset wasn't meant to impact the sleep. We were doing the discovery protocol, essentially trying to find out how their body responds to the gut reset. But we noticed their Oura ring that their sleep went from 30 minutes of deep sleep to 2 hours of deep sleep. And so when I create anything gut set included, it is a means for me to understand what's going on in someone's body. And then we learn through the process of application how it impacts different people differently. At this point, well over 3,000 people have done the gut reset, and they all have very, very different experiences based on where their baseline was. The whole thing, when it comes to wellness, it depends. But the gut reset was something that I did with my clients for almost 5 or 6 years before actually sharing that protocol publicly, because I really wanted to gather as much information on how clients were responding and then distill it to a more general format, which is the gut reset that you would receive. So again, if you want to get the gut reset, eatplaycrush.com, gut reset tab, download it. There's some bonus material in there. There's the gut reset protocol itself, which you'll be able to follow. There's recipes in there. And there's some bonus materials when it comes to fun little lattes, different whole food, nutrient dense smoothies, and then a mock week of recipes outside the gut reset. If you're like, what do I do after the gut reset? What do I eat? I included a week's worth of meals that are easy to make. Cook once, enjoy 2 different ways to make that easy for you to transition, and also show you that healthy meals don't have to be boring. There's like a pistachio pesto and a coconut butter salmon and a fat beet latte and things like that that keep the essence and the fun of food in there. So this is the year that I launched this podcast, and it is an independent podcast. So you being here at all, I am so grateful for. This is what allows me to keep going. I had some pretty badass guests for a new podcast, if I do say so myself. I think we're about 8 or 9 episodes in. I'm going to recap why I think you should go back and listen to those episodes. We started with Lupita Nyong'o. And I think you should listen to that episode because she did a really good job of taking you through the process I take clients through for them to get back to baseline, to really get inside their bodies. And so she got to touch on how going through the gut reset allowed her to get better in touch with her intuition during a really difficult time in her life personally while filming a movie. We were in the UK, and how that caused her to realize that she needed to surrender to the chaos in her life. And I think that's just a great episode to start with, not just for the podcast, but for anyone starting a health journey. I think you'll have a lot to take away from that. Also, she just has a soothing voice. Just listen to it to get your nervous system to calm down. Our next guest on this podcast was Tim Ferriss. And Tim I've known for a little over 10 years. And it's Tim Ferriss. Everyone loves hearing Tim talk. But I really think you should listen to this episode because he shows up in a way that, at least is the feedback that I received from those who've listened to it, you get to hear Tim in a different way. And I bring up topics that Tim and I talked about almost 10 years ago that were little surprises to him. I think if you're someone who is wondering what the future holds for yourself, if you're wondering how to define your legacy or define your purpose, this is a really impactful episode. You get to hear me remind him what his thoughts on legacy were 10 years ago and discuss how his thoughts on that have changed. And a little bit around a note that he left in a book that he gifted me around the price of power and the hero's farewell. That'll be my teaser there. And that is the second episode of the Eat, Play, Crush podcast. Mark Groves, that episode, you guys might know him as Create the Love. What I learned is that everyone loves a podcast about relationships. It doesn't matter what you do, your age, your gender, your profession, how you show up in the world. This podcast went bananas. It went viral on TikTok. I had clients calling me, telling me that they were having roundtable discussions re-listening to this episode. The premise of it was a little bit about Mark's story, but we talked about how to not waste a good breakup. And he talks about a closing ceremony that he had with his partner when they were breaking up. I call it an exit interview. That didn't land well with a lot of people. And he talks about a relationship he had in his late 20s where he was engaged. And a woman asked him 3 crucial questions that caused him to realize he should not be in that relationship. That not only was he doing a disservice to himself, he was doing a disservice to the person that he was dating. These 3 questions ticked off a lot of people on TikTok. I don't know why. But I think that almost anyone can gain something from this particular episode. And I don't know, with Valentine's Day coming up, I think you should listen to this and determine whether or not you will be having a Valentine this February. Jay Ferrugia, he is he's the dad of a lot of people in fitness. Jay's experience in the fitness industry goes back to like 1996. If you don't know who he is, I'm pretty shocked. But this episode is a great one for you to listen to if you want to learn about what true confidence is. True confidence with roots, not this bravado stuff. He talks about how he built confidence from an overweight, insecure kid to who he is today and how he did that authentically, how he built quick connections. A lot of the coaches in the sports world follow his work. And the question that I got asked that we got Jay to talk about is how to build that rapport with athletes, how to create a quick connection and build upon that in a way where even if you are someone who's introverted or shy or insecure, can find the tool set and find your voice in a really authentic way. Max Lugover. Max is a dear friend of mine. He has the Genus Life podcast, a top producing podcast in this space. You're going to hear Max talk about things he doesn't normally talk about. You guys might know him as being really prescriptive. He has experts. He's always talking about these are the top 3 foods for dementia. And we touched upon that for maybe 5 minutes. But this is a really powerful episode on how to take your pain and transmute that into purpose. When I met Max, he didn't have a podcast. There was no Genius Foods. He had just moved to California from New York, and his mom had just received a diagnosis of dementia. And he was really lost, and he talks about that. And he talks about how he used that very painful period in his life to build something truly beautiful, to really take advantage of the time he had left with his mom, and to create a very impactful body of work where he is helping millions of people at this point. And if you want to hear Max in a whole new way, and if you don't know who Max is, I think this is a great place to start with him and then dive into his body of work and learn more about who he is individually, as well as get to experience all the experts he has on his podcast from this episode. Logan Gelbrich is one of my favorite humans on this planet. He is someone that I want to make proud. No matter what I'm doing in life, if I feel confused about a situation professionally or personally, he's one of those people that I think about, not what would Logan do, but what would Logan expect me to do? And in this particular episode, Logan talks about deliberate discourse and the power that can create in organizations. He is a former baseball player. And we talk about his book called Going Right. And it's all about removing the emotion around achievement and focusing on the tactical and logical pursuit of that goal. There's a quote by a poet. I'm going to have to remember his name and put it in the show notes. But it says, "Inspiration is for amateurs," which I really identify with. It's really about showing up and doing the work. And that is what Logan and I talk about. And we also talk about this epic moment in his life as a baseball player, where everything was leading up to this particular moment at the plate. Everything, his whole life. And while he performed amazingly, they ended up losing the game. And one could say it was all for naught. And Logan's argument is that that is just the beginning, and the lessons that can be pulled from that doesn't mean everything that led up to that moment was for naught. And now he's built a body of work and a career off of that experience, teaching other people the pursuit of going right. And anyone can gain some insight into leadership in a macro way, like how to lead a group, but also leadership of yourself through this episode. It is personally one of my favorites because Logan challenges me to be a better leader. I've had a very difficult year, and I've been shying away from leadership. And I actually at some point ask him, what do you tell someone who doesn't want to be a leader, but keeps getting put in those positions? And in true coaching fashion, he calls bullshit on me. So if you want to see somebody call bullshit on me in a very kind way, this is the episode to listen to. Adam Bornstein. A lot of people don't know who Adam is outside of the fitness world. He is also an OG editor at Men's Health, worked with Tim Ferriss, manages work for Arnold Schwarzenegger, has a book called You Can't Screw This Up. He's been in the industry for a really long time, and he really carved out the path for himself. And the lesson he likes to teach in this episode is this idea of you've got to be so good they can't ignore you. And he is someone who has demonstrated that time and time again. And we visit an experience we both had many years ago around being a person of values, being a person who stands up to the bullies, being a person who really walks the path and sticks to their guns, and how that doesn't mean you get wins in the short run. It actually makes the path quite difficult in most cases. But if you stick to your guns, you eventually get to the success that you've built towards, and you can really rest your head at night knowing that you did it the right way without compromising your values. John Beer is the CEO and founder of Jack Taylor PR. You may not have heard of John Beer. You may not have heard of Jack Taylor PR, but you probably have heard of Athletic Greens. You probably have heard of Hyper Ice, Sleep 8, Momentous, Magic Mind, Four Sigmatic. The list goes on. These are brands that Jack Taylor PR and John Beer has worked with. So this episode, we talk about his personal story. John started out as a free diver / attorney in Australia, and then found himself in New York and started in PR, working up to having his own firm. And we spend quite a bit of time diving into what makes brands successful, what allows brands to sell products year after year, and how to tell a brand story. And so if you're someone who is building either a personal brand or a physical product, there's something for you to gain from this particular episode. John is a very direct and blunt person. He does not mince words. So nothing in this episode will be wasted. And it's definitely one that I think you should listen to, especially if you're in the space that we're in when you're building brands and products. Mark Sisson. This episode was only a few in, but I'm bringing it up last on purpose because this one impacted me the most. We talked about foot health, which is important, and I want you to listen to Mark's thoughts on foot health and his new venture, Paluva. But Mark, you might know him as the founder of Primal Kitchen, which I had formulated some of their early products for. Mark talks about building a brand and being an entrepreneur and what it's like to be able to do that while not sacrificing your family, without sacrificing your health. Like, he did it the right way. And in this episode, I actually have the clip, and the camera was panned in a way that I felt it in the moment and I got emotional. And then watching it back, I was like, oh yeah, there's that of that feeling in your throat when you have a realization. But that episode led me to a very difficult decision with Fat Fudge. And I decided in that moment to let go of Fat Fudge, which is not an easy task, not necessarily because my identity is wrapped up into it, which I think is an easy assumption for someone to make, but it's a product that's so beloved and it is used across so many industries. So many sports organizations use it. One of the best photos that means nothing to someone if they don't know the context is a packet of Fat Fudge opened next to a champagne bottle covered in champagne in Boston when the Warriors won. And it was the recovery Fat Fudge, which meant the athlete that ate that after winning a championship still went and reached for his Fat Fudge. And it felt like a big win for the product. And it's the love for its potential. And if you're not familiar with what happened with Fat Fudge, I built the business from scratch, $600 to about $1 million in sales as a solopreneur. And then I decided to take on modest investment and try to grow it. And through a series of events that happened over a very short 6 months, everything that I built got dismantled and was thrown into $300,000 debt and no product to sell. And I had to dig out of that. And there's silver lining to this story of without that happening, I wouldn't have thrown myself back into consulting. But I've spent the last 3 years sacrificing everything, my finances, my health, my mental health, my experiences in life, trying to not build Fat Fudge, but bring it back from the grave. And I've been able to just get it by. And more recently, there was a shift with the bakery we were making it out of and then having to go to a co-packer. And was just depleted. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to really bring this back. And I had that realization when Mark said something in this episode. And I decided to surrender, like Lupita said in her episode, just really give in. And by virtue of giving in and accepting that, I had a few friends want to talk me off a ledge but understand why I was coming to that decision. And it happened very quick. So I made that decision, let's say on a Wednesday. And Mark walked me back to my car after our episode, and he said, I really want to give you permission to let this go. It's not that I was worried about how I'd feel around failing. It's just, I just know that Fat Fudge has more life to it. It's a damn good product. It has survived a few copycats out there. And I was like, I appreciate the permission and I'm going to simmer on it. And then we had lunch a couple of days later and I was like, no, this is the right call. So I was looking into my options, letting it completely die on its own. Do you file bankruptcy? What is this like? And by being vocal about this decision, an opportunity for Fat Fudge has come up, and for Fat Fudge on its own. And I'll get into the details about that later because it's still in play. But I'm at a point now where I've accepted the fact that I have to let go of Fat Fudge. And creating space for that decision allowed an opportunity to come in to take on Fat Fudge on my behalf. My involvement will be small, but I won't be the owner of Fat Fudge anymore. But it'll have the opportunity to grow back to where it was and even greater. And had I not had this episode with Mark, had I not come to that acceptance, had I not vocalized the fact that I'm letting this go, this opportunity would not have presented itself. And it happened very quickly. I flew out of state to Tennessee to have this meeting and sort out what the future for the company would look like. And we're still in play with that. But if you want to see that moment, if you can pinpoint that moment in this episode, leave me a comment. I want to see if you guys can see the look on my face. But if you are someone who is building a product, building a company, and you're struggling, I think you should really watch this episode. If you're struggling in the essence of you feel like you're losing out on time, losing out on your health, Mark brings a different perspective. There's a big perspective around grind, sacrifice, delayed gratification. And there's an element of truth to that. There are sacrifices you have to make, but then there's a line where your sacrifices go too far. And mine started to go too far probably about 1.5 years ago. And I really just pushed through it at the expense of my own health and my own happiness. And so fingers crossed, this thing I'm alluding to for Fat Fudge having a new life comes to full fruition. I purposely saved Mark for last as far as the mentioning it, because even if this podcast doesn't take off, if for any reason alone, that moment makes this successful for me. Because ever since I made that decision, I'm not saying I'm stress-free, but this calm and this acceptance and this sense of wisdom has come over me. And I've joined a new club. I was part of the club of leaving a corporate job and building a business. I got to join the club of self-funding a product and bringing it to a point of it being distributed nationwide. Being a business owner is something you should be very proud of. And then I got to join the club of having to make the difficult decision to shut the doors on your business. And this is not something that you can talk about and really understand unless you've been through it. And so I'm part of that club, and we'll see what club I end up joining next in that. And I'm in the middle of like, I've learned a lot, and those lessons are valuable. And there's a part of me that's really bummed out and feel like I've let a lot of people down. And so I am excited for what could be in the future for Fat Fudge, because the product should still live on and people should still get to enjoy it. And the product itself, the formula is not going to change. I'm making absolute certain of that. And we'll see what the future holds for Eat, Play, Crush and for me.
When it comes to your body's performance and recovery, what's going on in the gut is critical and has historically been overlooked. And when I say performance, I'm not just talking about athletic performance. I'm talking about the overall function of your body, because my belief is if you have a body, you are performing at some level, which is why no matter age, gender, sport, or profession, starting with gut health is a non-negotiable in my practice when I'm building out a program for a client, which is why I'm very excited to share with you the sponsor of this podcast, LiveCap, a carefully crafted probiotic with a primary focus on oxygen optimization, which helps improve gut health, nutrient absorption, immune system function, and overall wellness. Many of you have probably gotten used to living in discomfort and can relate to the common factors that weaken your gut, like stress, disrupted sleep, environmental changes, and intense training. Formulated by a pioneer in the gut microbiome and brought to market by a 20-year gastroenterologist, LiveCap was created for athletes, weekend warriors, and everyday health enthusiasts, which chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you fall into one of those categories. This is the probiotic I use personally and among all my clients, and have even my family using it. To learn more and to get yourself some LiveCap, go to eatplaycrush.com/LiveCap, LYVECAP, or just go to eatplaycrush.com. You will see it in the navigation menu. They come in cap form, hence LiveCap, or sachets. I personally get the sachets because I travel a ton.
I would say that's all I've got for this episode, this first solo episode, but I feel like I covered quite a bit. So hopefully I didn't lose you in this. But that is it for this episode, this first episode of 2024. If you're not already following me on social media, I'm at Paleo Chef. If you have not written a review, if you have not subscribed, if you have not rated this podcast, can you please do that? Please. This is an independent podcast. Your support means the absolute world. I'm excited for the year to come. I'm excited for the guests we're going to have. If there's anyone that you guys want me to interview or any topics you want me to cover, I'm all ears. Send those suggestions my way. And remember the 3 questions. I do want to hear your response, but we'll recap them. For 2024, what is something you want to start doing? What is something you want to stop doing? And what is something you want to continue to do? I am incredibly excited for 2024, all the guests that we're going to have. If there's anyone that you want me to interview or any topics you want me to cover, please chime in. I want to hear it. But also let me know what kind of content you want to see on my social media. Even if it's something like, can you talk more about bloating specifically? Or do you want to see more recipes? Do you want to see more soft skill posts, like how it is that I determine what deals I want to work with, how I negotiate projects with organizations, how I choose my clients? Like, let me know what you would find valuable for me to dive in further. And it could be, like I said, tactical. It could be like, Mary, please just give us recipes. I hear you. I know I should have a cookbook. I'm working on it. But anything that you can think of. And personally, I don't always want it to be something that's tactical when it comes to performance. So just look at, my favorite to you is Eat, Play, Crush creates its identity throughout the year. The podcast itself and the agency, performance agency, is I want you to view me through the lens of like a full functioning human, not just a chef, not just a performance person that you talk to or ask like, what do I eat to sleep better? But like me as a female entrepreneur, navigating life, balancing life, making decisions in business, making decisions in life, and how I treat people, how I view leadership, how I view quote unquote failure. Any of those topics that you want me to dive into, please ask me those questions, because answering questions outside of what I do day in and day out also gives me energy to keep being able to do what I do day in and day out. And maybe it's a fear of being boxed into one thing, but I've been doing the day in and day out thing for 10 years. And that's why I created the Eat, Play, Crush podcast, is to be able to expand outside of that, because I think anyone that you're following online, any person that you're listening to their podcast, there's so much more than the job that they do. And I know this because we talk about it. When somebody asks us things or has interest in something outside of our core function of our profession, it makes us feel happy and seen, and it gives us energy. It's like filling my cup back up. You might think like, oh, the likes and the comments help. It's like, no, it's when you guys ask me questions that are super thoughtful outside of just the performance-based stuff, it makes my heart swell a little bit. So any and all inquiries you have around that will help me better serve you, but also give me some excitement in new life, which I think is something we all can benefit from in this new year and the years to come.
And that is it on today's episode. Thanks so much for hanging out. Your time and attention never goes unappreciated. If anything in today's show stood out to you, I encourage you to share it to social and tag me. That is how you can help a little independent show like mine grow. And of course, rate, review, and subscribe to Eat, Play, Crush wherever it is you get your podcasts. If you want to follow me, I'm at Paleo Chef on social media, or the show at Eat, Play, Crush. If you want to stay in touch via my newsletter or get your hands on the gut reset, visit eatplaycrush.com. And until next time, be well, do good, and trust your gut.